Ladies and gentlemen, Mollusk here. This time bringing you a Warhammer Fantasy battle report with a bit of a difference. Basically, my friend has agreed to indulge me in my obsession and give playing a battle a go. So, one thing to say right off the bat, this is not going to be a normal battle report. I think my friend had the starter set when he was a kid and maybe played it a few times with his brother. So this game is really his first in his adult life, and certainly with 8th edition. Therefore, this is an introductory game, so my goal is for us to have as fun a time as possible. That means I'm not trying to beat his face in, but I'm also not just going to let him win. A close fought battle is almost always the most fun in my experience. So this is not going to be a battle where two geniuses go head to head, and it's not the kind of report I'm going to make a habit of doing. However, before you click off to go watch the Sustainable Centre or something, consider this. I'm going to be focusing this report on the concept of how to introduce a new player to Warhammer. And I think that's fairly important. So let's get right into this. First point, know your opponent. My friend is a very bright guy, and he has an interest in gaming, by which I mean board games. But I know he's played some Magic in the past, and has dabbled a bit in Warhammer many years ago. He really surprised me by actually reading the rules before playing this game. So basically what I'm trying to say is that each new player is an individual, and I have a rather favourable case subject here. So to point number 2, play the damn battle. Whatever it takes, get them to the table and play a game, because Warhammer is awesome, and they're going to love it once they try it. Obviously, they're going to need an army, and if you're one of these guys with several, they can just take one of yours, no problem. But if you don't, and your friend isn't willing to buy and paint an entire army before he gives the game a try, it's time to employ some imagination. So you can see my friend has cut out pieces of paper in the size of the units that he wants. Now there appear to be people out there who, at least by the statements they make, would seemingly rather chew their own arms off than play an army that wasn't painted to a professional level 7 standard. For tournaments I can see the argument of having painted models, but in a casual game I'm sure most of us just don't give a toss. I understand that if you're watching a battle report, you want to see some good looking models, but as this is a video about luring someone into the game, and as my camera quality is pretty craptastic at the best of times, I think you can forgive me. Point 3. Setting up the battlefield. We're playing the standard battle line because it's just the easiest. We've got a forest and a river to show the crazy things they do, and also demonstrate what happens to cavalry when they go through them. This watchtower building is just impassable terrain, this is a hill, and it's an obstacle I think. So we've got enough terrain for some variety, but hopefully not enough to slow the game down. So, my opponent won the roll to choose which side he deployed on, and he chose that side. Here's my deployment. I have Harpies in a river, Giant, big unit of Gore with my BSB and Shaman, level 4, a unit of Ungor Raiders, another unit of Harpies, and another unit of Ungor Raiders. My level 2 Shaman is in with this unit of Ungor Raiders. So my thinking with the list I've taken is that I have a big combat block, so I can smash it into stuff and we can have fun pulling models off each other. I've got some characters for challenges and an average magic phase. I've got a giant because they're just hilarious, and a ton of chaff because I want to control the movement phase, so I can shape the game how I want it to go for maximum fun. And I think it's also important to show my friend at least some of the dickish things you can do with chaff. I was a little bit worried about taking this much because it can slow the game down and make your opponent feel that they're not in control and can't do what they want. But I know my friend is interested in game mechanics, and so I judged that he'd have the cojones to deal with it. So this is my friend's deployment. We have 2 rock lobbers and a unit of 18 Savage Orcs with the General and the BSB. Next to that we have a unit of 20 Savage Orcs with full command and some Savage Boar Riders with a level 2 Shaman. My friend wins the first turn and he doesn't move. He figures he's got me outranged. Little does he know about the devastating ranged power of the Ungor Raiders. With a pathetic 4 dice magic phase, he casts the Foot of Gork, but it scatters off, and then both his war machines scatter off my big block of gore. Very disappointing turn, but my friend was philosophical. We go into Beastmen turn 1, and the Harpies go up the flank. The river turns out to be a river of blood or gore or something, so units that go through it cause fear for a turn, and I just push into the centre. The Harpies go right up, because I want to try to show him what a double-edged sword frenzy can be, and the Ungor are going to slow down the boars until I'm ready to deal with them. I think the magic phase is at least as bad as last turn, and I don't get any spells off. Needless to say, the Ungor don't do anything in shooting. Orcs turn 2. He passes all his animosity, declares a charge on the Harpies with the Savage Orcs, and a charge on the Ungor with the Boar Riders. The Ungor flee and the Harpies hold, and he decides not to redirect with the Boar Riders because he wants to try to get them more central and not go chasing off after Ungor on the flanks. And that's fun. I'm gearing up to show him what a traffic jam means. In the magic phase, however, he surprises me by going for the Big Hand of Gork, or whatever the spell is that allows you to move a unit around. Unfortunately, the level 2 didn't make the casting value, and the spell failed. Unfortunately for the Boar Boys. And that's a shame, because that was a good move that I'd have liked to see him pull off. However, he does manage to get off the normal Foot of Gork, and I let it go. And it stomps about 13 of my goatees flat. There's the feel-good feeling. In the shooting phase, the first rock lobber scatters off the Gore unit and hits the Ungor, but it only kills one. The second one's aim is a little bit better, and I think it kills like 5 or 6 of my Gore. So yeah, much better. In combat, the Savage Orcs destroy the Harpies and take no casualties. They're forced to overrun, but enjoy splashing through the River of Blood so much that they barely go anywhere. And that's perfect. So, in Beastmen turn 2, the Harpies charge the rock lobber. The Giant moves up to make sure his general unit is forced to play my game. This unit of Ungor Raiders move up in front of his Boar Boys, and they can't stand up on that hill, so I just throw them in a pile there. And this is quite an important point. I forget which one we're on. Point 5. Don't be sloppy like this. Beyond the fact it's lazy and it looks bad, I have a plan for these guys. Obviously I charge with my Gore unit into the flank of the Savage Orcs, and if everything goes my way, my plan is to show my friend what happens when you flee through an enemy unit and a friendly unit. But obviously where the Ungor are actually matters, and when they're in a pile like this and not spaced correctly, if this all works out, it might look like I'm cheating, or at least pulling a bit of a fast one in order to get an advantage. And that kind of thing always leaves a bad taste in the mouth, so don't do this. In other news, my Ungor rally, and in the magic phase I fail to do any spells again. In shooting, my Ungor actually do manage to kill a Boar Boy. At this range, presumably just knocked him senseless by throwing the bow. In combat, the Harpies flub horrifically. They kill a Goblin, and a Goblin kills a Harpy, so they only win by a charge. Luckily, he's out of his Generals and BSB's range, and they fail their leadership test and flee off the board. I don't want to get rid of his other catapult yet, though, so I just restrain the Harpies and reform them. In this combat, it works perfectly. I challenge with my champion, he accepts with his, I don't think they do anything to each other, and we end up winning by a 3 or so. He was out of his Inspiring Presence and reroll bubble, and he broke, and didn't run very far. So I had to space my Ungor out properly to make sure he'd go through them. It wasn't nice having to try to break that to him, and I definitely should have been more careful with this. But anyway, they're still on the board, and hopefully they'll rally next turn. And I reform to face the General's unit and expose my flank to the Boar Riders. So hopefully he'll charge the Ungor, massacre them, and we can demonstrate an overrun. So here we go. He rolls Animosity for his General Savage Orcs, and they fail. And then they roll a 1. But as there's no one close by, instead of doing nothing, which I really felt gutted for him for, they treat it as the result where they just charge something instead, and that's great. Funnily enough, exactly the same thing happened with the Boar Boys, and they were forced to charge my uncle. Perfect. Magic was pretty ineffectual. I think I block the Foot of Gork this time, and shooting doesn't do much better, as the rock lobber scatters off the big Gore unit. In combat, my giant picks up the BSB and hurls him back into combat, doing a wound to him and killing another orc. And then the orcs retaliate by chopping a lot of wounds off the giant. He loses combat, breaks and runs, and shows off impressive agility as he doesn't fall over from breaking in from combat, doesn't take a dangerous terrain from running through impassable terrain, and doesn't fall over whilst doing that either. Beastmen turn 3, the giant rallies, the Ungor on the Shaman part ways, the Harpies show off how they can fly over units and get back to the centre so they can harass things once the Ungor die, and my Gore just jog forward because I feel things are going a little bit too well for me at the moment, and I want to draw things out a little bit longer. In Magic I get Occam's Mindrazor off, on the Gore unit to give them just a little bit of protection against a rear charge from those boars. But I get it with irresistible force, and both my shamans take wounds and suck the rest of my dice down the hole. With nothing else happening, we go into Orc's turn 4. My friend surprises me by not charging the boar boys at the flank or rear of the Gore, and instead he decides to practice his wheeling and moves up to where you see. Not quite sure what he was thinking here, but it might have been that he didn't want to take a dangerous terrain test and then fight some strength 8 Gore without support. So he tries to swift reform his general's unit and fails, so they're just looking that towards his table edge, and he's trying to set up that double charge. But first, magic happens, and another 13 Gore join the Paper Warriors in the second dimension. That unit is now looking considerably more threadbare. He then does a gaze of Mork through my unit, but even though we no longer get lookout sirs, he still only kills a couple of the rank and file. And then in the shooting phase, the rock lobber, which I'd left alone in my arrogance, plonks a rock right on my general's head and kills him outright. Yep. I think we're ready for combat now. So in the Beastmen turn, the Harpies charge the Bull Boys for giggles. The Giant stomps around the corner for round 2. The remaining Gore reform to face their destiny, and the young Gore on the level 2 try to be dicks one last time and get in the way. In Magic, the level 2 miscasts Wissen's Wild Form on the Gore unit and dies. Good, good. In combat, the Harpies die, and he rolls piss poor for his overrun, though it looks like the Harpies took one down with them. In the Orc turn, the Ungor make it next to impossible for the Savage Orcs to complete a charge against the Gore herd, and in the end he decides it's just easier to charge the Ungor. The Savage Boars make short work of that charge and easily get into the Gore. He chooses to do the Boar Rider combat first, and why not? And I take the opportunity to play a particularly douchebag move. I'm pretty confident he's got the game at this point, so I want to show him what you can do with the challenge mechanic in situations like this. I ask if he wants to challenge, he doesn't, so I challenge with my Wargore BSB, who's currently Strength and Toughness 6, thanks to Wissen's Wild Form and the Beast Banner. He accepts with his Shaman, who's got the spell up that gives him +3 attacks and strength. The Battle Standard Bearer Wargore goes first, and thanks to Primal Fury, and despite Shrunken Head, he kills the Shaman before the Shaman can strike. But now, none of the Bull Riders can attack my unit. Ooh, I feel a bit dirty, but at the same time it's great when a plan comes together just right. 3 of the Ungor die, 1 of the Ungor runs away and gets caught, and we can all shed a tear. Enraged at the deaths of his little friends, the Giant charges in the flank of the Savage Boys to give it another go. He smacks them with his club a bit. I don't think they do anything in return, and so I think the Giant wins combat, but they stick and pass their test so that they can reform. In the other combat, the rest of the Gore die, but the Wargore BSB holds his ground. We go into the Orc turn. The Giant picks up the BSB, throws him back into the unit, killing him and another Orc. I think the War Boss, whatever he's called, slips a wound through on the Giant, and we draw combat, but they win because of the musician, and my Giant sticks around anyway. My BSB beats down another Savage Orc, takes a wound in return, and everyone sticks around. What a hero. And finally, Beastmen turn 6. The BSB goes down after taking another couple Boar Boys with him. The Giant maybe kills another Orc and takes another wound, but sticks around. And there it is, the end of the game. So, some closing thoughts. I had a brilliant time playing this game, and I hope my friend did too. There were some great moments, like the Foot of Gork repeatedly smashing my big unit, the Bray Shaman getting War Machine sniped, and the Wargore standing up on his own to that unit of Boar Boys. And I'm very happy with how well my little plans and some of those opportunities that arose went. Excellent stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting. Something a bit different anyway. But now, you know what time it is.